Hello. Since the office of the presidency started in 1789, the White House has been filled with leaders from a multitude of backgrounds that brought unique ideas and talents, causing their own mark to be made in our nation's history. The fifth graders have put together presentations detailing the lives and presidential terms of the 44 people that we call the presidents.
George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. Also known as Father of his country, George Washington was part of the House of Burgesses and Continental Congress. One of many reasons he had his presidency was him and his troops, allied with the French, fought against the British in war and won. This was known as the Revolutionary War. Washington believed that shaking hands was beneath the president, so instead he bowed. He won the election with 132 votes. His vice president was John Adams. Did you know George Washington never really cut down a cherry tree? That story was just told to teach kids not to lie, also known as an apocryphal. He married Martha Dandridge Custis in 1759, January 6th. Washington served in office for 7 years and 41 weeks. In conclusion, Washington was an amazing and patriotic president.
First is the worst and second is the best with John Adams.
Adams was president number 2. It all began when Thomas Jefferson lost pathetically when running for president. Before that, John Adams served as vice president for Mr. George Washington. He had a wonderful wife named Abigail Adams, and John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams, was president number 6. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. John Adams was born on October 30th, 1735, in Quincy, Massachusetts. He came from a very wealthy family and went to Harvard College and went to become a lawyer. John Adams was against the British ideals but defended the British soldiers from the Boston Massacre. He was a member of the First and Second Continental Congress and helped write the Declaration of Independence. After America won the Revolutionary War, he became the first vice president of the United States. He was unhappy as vice president, and he felt limited to what he could do. He won the next election and became second president of the United States.
Thomas Jefferson, the third president.
He served to 1801 to 1809. He was the governor of Virginia. His nickname for him were the Man of People and Sage of Monticello. When he was a kid, he loved to paint, and he became an artist. When he was a spokesman too. When he was a president, he served 2 terms. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was also a founding father and part of the House of Burgesses. When president, he married Martha Wales Skelton, and he had 7 kids. He beat John Adams in presidency. His wife was a famous poetry writer. He was part of the Continental Congress, and when he was old, he built Thomas Jefferson University in Virginia. Thomas Jefferson was a great president and a great help to our country.
James Madison, the fourth president.
He served for 2 terms in between 1809 and 1870. Before he was president, he was in the first Constitutional Convention. Also, he was the Secretary of State. A fun fact was that Zachary Taylor and Madison were second cousins. When he was president, he was the shortest and lightest one. He helped write the Federalist Papers, which were papers about people who agreed on the Constitution. Also, he helped write the Bill of Rights and was the father of the Constitution. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte and his troops attacked the White House and set fire to it. Then Madison declared war. Also, after he died, they named James Madison University after him. Those are some fun and interesting facts about James Madison.
James Monroe, fifth president of the United States.
James Monroe, born in Westmoreland, Virginia, was an amazing president. He acquired many laws. Monroe wrote the Missouri Compromise, saying that Missouri and Maine were both states. He also changed the American flag to have 13 stripes. Did you know that James Monroe received every presidential election vote except for one? People said Monroe was so honest that if you turned his soul inside out, it would be spotless. Monroe was also the second lieutenant in the Revolutionary War.
John Quincy Adams, 6th President of the United States.
John Quincy Adams, son of John Adams, was a great president. Did you know the Adams family was the first family to have a father and son be president? Adams was in many political parties, including diplomat, senator, and House of Representatives. Adams declared that the British Army leave Latin America alone. Adams was also the first president to be married overseas and the first president to be photographed.
Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States.
He was the youngest of 3 kids. As a kid, Andrew and his brother Robert refused to shine in an officer's shoes. For that action, they were put in jail. Eventually, both came down with smallpox. Robert died suddenly, but Andrew pulled through and got better. He was a war general in the War of 1812, and he also became a lawyer. When 1829 came, Jackson became the President of the United States. He was a strong believer in states' rights and in extending slavery into new Western territories. Andrew Jackson was elected by a popular vote. He was a frontier president and was nicknamed Old Hickory. He was the first man elected from Tennessee to the House of Representatives, but turned it down just days later. Late in his presidency, Jackson was dining and someone whispered that the Senate rejected the nomination of Martin Van Buren as minister to England. He jumped to his feet and yelled, "By the Eternal, I'll smash him." So those are some facts about Andrew Jackson.
Martin Van Buren was the 8th president.
Van Buren was a Democrat, and his presidential years were 1837 to 1841. He was the first president to be born after the Revolutionary War. By accident, he made the phrase "okay" popular. While he was president, the Panic of 1837 happened. It was one of our country's worst depressions, and when it happened, Van Buren did nothing. He didn't want to add Texas to the country because that would add slavery territory, and he forced Cherokee relocation. Chicago became a city, and the first baseball game was played during his presidency. Martin Van Buren was our best 8th president.
William Henry Harrison, the 9th President.
He served from March 4th, 1841 to April 4th, 1841. He served as president for the shortest amount of time ever, and he was the first president to die in office. He was born in Virginia, and his nickname was Old Tippecanoe. Old Tippecanoe and Tyler too was a famous saying referring to Harrison and his vice president John Tyler. Harrison's nickname was Old Tippecanoe because he won a big battle at Tippecanoe Battlefield. He was also a part of the Whig Party, and he was the first Whig to be a president.
John Tyler, the 10th President.
Tyler was president from April 4th, 1841 to March 4th, 1845. He never really wanted to be president, so when he was president, he was really mad. He was born in Virginia, and when he was president, he started the Log Cabin Bill. And that means if you buy 160 acres of land or more, it is $1.25 an acre. He also had 15 kids. He was the first president to have that many kids in office.
James K. Polk is the 11th President of the United States of America.
James K. Polk's nickname was Young Hickory. The K in his name stands for Knox. He was running against Henry Clay, and he beat him by 38,367 votes. One fun fact is that the first annual White House Thanksgiving dinner was hosted by his wife, Sarah Polk. Sarah Polk also banned dancing, card playing, and alcoholic beverages while she was in the White House. In Polk's presidency, he added more than 1 million square miles to the U.S. The states he added included Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California, Oregon, Idaho, Washington, much of New Mexico, and portions of Wyoming. The downside was that the North and South started to fight because slavery was growing really high. In conclusion, James K. Polk might not be very famous, but there is no doubt that he did help the United States of America.
Zachary Taylor was the 12th President of the United States. Zachary Taylor was the 12th President. He served from 1849 to 1850. He died in office. He made $25,000 a year, and when he wasn't president, he was a soldier. Taylor was running against Lewis Cass. He was known as Old Rough and Ready. He was the last person to own slaves during his presidency. He and James Madison were second cousins. Now, talking about his death, he went to a picnic and was eating cherries and drinking milk. Some people believe that the sewageous bacteria got in the milk. Other people think it was the acidity from the cherries. Later, they exhumed his body and thought it was both. But no one knows what happened to the other people who were at the picnic. But all in all, Taylor lived a very eventful life.
Millard Fillmore was the 13th President of the United States.
Millard Fillmore was the 13th president. He served from 1850 to 1853. He was known as the American Louis Philippi. Did you know that Phoebe, his mom's maiden name, which is Millard, and last name, which is Fillmore, was his first and last name? Get it? Millard Fillmore. He was also the Comptroller of New York, and he was elected two non-consecutive times to the U.S. House of Representatives. He also earned $25,000 in a year. Going along with money, he was on the $1 coin. He was Zachary Taylor's vice president, and he tried to run again in 1856, but lost by 961,224 popular votes and 166 electoral votes. He was known as the most handsome president.
Franklin Pierce, the 14th President.
His nickname is Young Hickory of the Granite Hills. He also appears on the U.S. gold dollar. Pierce served in the Mexican War. Without a day of training, he begged James Polk for him to fight in the Mexican War. His wish was granted, and he was the new brigadier general. Sadly, he had 3 sons that never reached adulthood. He was in the USA House of Representatives. Pierce memorized a 3,000-word speech and used no notes or anything to help him. Something fun is that he was the first president to introduce a Christmas tree in the White House. His vice president died a few weeks into his presidency. I hope you learned something today.
James Buchanan, 15th President.
Before his presidency, he was in the USA House of Representatives. He also was a lawyer. His nickname is Old Buck. A fun fact is that he appears on the U.S. gold dollar. He also was the first president to wear blue jeans in the Oval Office. Buchanan was the only president to never marry. He fought in the War of 1812 and lost his middle finger. Another fun fact is that he has 2 different eye colors, one green and one brown. Another nickname he had is 10-Cent Jimmy because he said workers should get paid 10 cents. Because he didn't marry, his niece Harriet Lane Johnson served as First Lady. I hope that you learned something about James Buchanan.
Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. Abraham Lincoln was a great president. His father's name was Thomas Lincoln, and his mother's was Nancy Hanks Lincoln. When he became an adult, he and his wife had 4 children. When Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1834, while he was president, his nickname was Honest Abe. As president, he was assassinated 5 days after the Civil War had ended. Before Lincoln was the president, he was a lawyer. After Lincoln was assassinated, he was buried in Oak Ridge Cemetery, Springfield, Illinois. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president. Lincoln was the only president that had a patent. Lincoln established Thanksgiving to be a national holiday. Lincoln's life was saved twice as a child. Abraham was the first president to be assassinated. Lincoln was a president from March 4th, 1861 to April 15th, 1865. As president, Lincoln declared war on the South. Lincoln led the United States in Civil War. On January 1st, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation that abolished all slavery. Therefore, Abraham Lincoln was an amazing president, and we still honor him today. Those are some facts about Abraham Lincoln.
Andrew Johnson was the 17th President of the United States of America.
Andrew Johnson only served 1 term. Johnson was vice president during Lincoln's term.
The president who killed Lincoln tried to kill Johnson, but he escaped death. When he was little, both of his parents didn't know how to read or write. Johnson never went to school. His family was very poor. He became president from vice president. While being president, Congress approved the 13th and 14th Amendment. The 13th was that all slaves were free, and the 14th was that all former slaves are U.S. Americans. He was also president when his Secretary of State, William Seward, negotiated the purchase of Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. He was also one vote away from being kicked out of office. Those are some facts about Andrew Johnson.
Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th President of the United States of America.
Ulysses S. Grant served from 1869 to 1877. He was a general for the Union in the Civil War in 1861. He served 2 terms in the White House. Did you know his name wasn't Ulysses S. Grant? His real name is Hiram Ulysses Grant. The S in his name doesn't stand for anything. He also was supposed to be at Lincoln's side at the day of his assassination. Grant declined so he could visit his wife and children in New Jersey. He was informed about Lincoln's death when his train stopped that night. He said it was the darkest day of my life and regretted not being at his side. Ulysses S. Grant is America's first 4-star general to be president. By the summer of 1867, tensions were getting high between the Republicans in Congress and Andrew Johnson, so Secretary replaced him with Grant. He was president during the Construction era.
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Rutherford B. Hayes was the 19th president. He attended Harvard Law School and received his degree in 1845. Also, Lucy Ware Webb, his wife, was the first wife of the president to graduate college. He fought in the Civil War, but was severely wounded. He became president in 1877. During his presidency, he helped a lot with causes such as the Civil War and the poor. He also had 8 kids. Fun fact, he was the first president ever to have a telephone in his office.
James A. Garfield, the 20th president.
James A. Garfield was the 20th president. He lost his father at 2 years old. At age 31, Garfield became the brigadier general. In 1859, he was elected to the Ohio Senate as a Republican. Later in 1862, Ohioans elected him to Congress. Soon after, Abraham Lincoln persuaded him to resign from his commission, which led him to the leading Republican in the White House. Then, in 1881, he gained his presidency. Later, Garfield's Secretary of State invited all American republics to a conference in Washington, but it never took place, because on July 2, 1881, at a Washington railroad, he was assassinated. 2 months later, on September 19, 1881, he died from blood poisoning. Fun fact, Garfield and his wife, Lucia Rudolph, had 7 kids.
Chester A. Arthur, 21st president.
He served 1 term from 1881 to 1885. He was a Republican and was inaugurated on March 4, 1881. He was vice president for James Garfield, who died in office. His nicknames were the Gentleman Boss and Elegant Arthur. He was called Elegant Arthur because he was known for being very well dressed. He had 3 children, William, Chester, and Ellen, with a salary of $50,000 a year. He activated the first immigration law, which was discrimination against Chinese criminals and the mentally ill. He later revised that law and just still wouldn't allow Chinese. He also made a tax commission law. He made 2 boat safety laws. One was to check the boats before they were used. Then he passed the Edmunds Act, which did not allow polygamists or bigamists to be part of government. All in all, Chester A. Arthur was a great president.
Grover Cleveland was the 22nd president.
Grover Cleveland's religion was Presbyterian. Did you know he had no education and other government positions? All loyal sheriff of Erie County, 1870 to 1873, mayor of Buffalo, New York, 1882, governor of New York, 1883 to 1885.
My president, Benjamin Harrison. He was the 23rd president.
They called him Little Ben because he was 5 feet and 6 inches. He served once, then quit, then got reelected. Federal troops had a clash with the Indians. Federal troops killed 150 men, women, and children. Benjamin Harrison was the first president from Indiana, first president to lose a former president. Harrison lost the popular vote but won the electoral vote. He was the grandson of a former president, William Henry Harrison, the 9th president. He was 55 when he was elected. He was the first president to put electricity in the White House, but everyone was worried they would get electric shock.
Grover Cleveland was the 24th president, too.
He was the only president to leave the White House and return for a second term. He also got rid of many private personal bills to Civil War veterans. His salary was $50,000 per year, which is a lot for 1880s and 1889s.
William McKinley, 25th president.
William McKinley was the 25th President of the United States. He was the first person in the 20th century to become president from 1996 through 1901. When he was young, he fought in the Civil War. When he was older, he was a leader of the Spanish-American War. He then became a Republican and lawyer. Then he won a seat in Congress for 14 years. He was married to Ida Saxton on January 25, 1871. He and Ida had 2 children. Their names were Katrina and Ida. When McKinley ran for president, he went against Jennings Bryan. On his second term as President of the United States, he gave a speech in front of the White House. And the next day, an unemployed Detroit mill worker named Leon Cortez shot William McKinley twice in the chest. All in all, he was a great president.
Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president. Theodore Roosevelt was an American statesman, author, explorer, soldier, a naturalist, and most known for being a president. He was elected President of the USA in 1901. He was, and still is, the youngest person to be in the position of President. One of his greatest achievements was conserving natural resources and landmarks, such as the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone National Park. The stuffed teddy bear is named after him, since on a camping trip in 1902, he refused to shoot a bear. From then, he served 2 terms. Before he became president, he went to Harvard University, Harvard College, and Columbia Law School. Today, he is buried in Young's Memorial Cemetery, town of Oyster Bay, New York.
William Howard Taft, the 27th president.
William Howard Taft is the 27th president. He served from 1909 to 1913 and is the 10th Chief Justice. He is the only president to be Chief Justice after he was president. His nickname was Big Bill because he got stuck in a bathtub. He was the largest president because he weighed 300 pounds and was 6 feet tall. He had a cow named Pauline for his diet. Taft made the 16th and 17th Amendments. He was very smart and he graduated at the top of his class and was a judge at the age of 30. He left office and said to Wilson, "I'm glad to be going. This is the loneliest place in the world."
Woodrow Wilson, 28th president.
Woodrow Wilson was the 28th president. He was part of the Democratic Party. His salary was $75,000 a year. Today's is $400,000 a year. His nickname is Schoolmaster in Politics. He went to Princeton. His pets were Old Ike the Ram, sheep, and cats. He was twice elected U.S. president and was known for helping create the doomed League of Nations. The League of Nations was an international organization established after World War I. All in all, he was a great president until Warren G. Harding was elected.
Warren G. Harding, 29th president.
Warren G. Harding was the 29th president. He was part of the Republican Party. His salary was $75,000 a year. Today's salary is $400,000 a year. His pets were Laddie Boy, an Airedale, an Old Boy, and a Bulldog. He played every instrument except the slide trombone and E-flat cornet. Before Harding was president, he was an editor and publisher. He died of a heart attack. All in all, I think he was a good president.
Calvin Coolidge, 30th president.
Calvin Coolidge served from 1923 to 1929, so he served for 6 years. Before he was president, he went to Amherst College. While he was visiting Vermont, he got the word that he was the president. His father gave him the oath of office. Calvin Coolidge was president during the period between the two world wars. He was a Republican. Since he didn't talk that much, his nickname is Silent Cal. Fun fact is his birthday is on July 4th. He also had 2 pet raccoons named Reuben and Rebecca, who also lived in the White House with him. All in all, Coolidge was a great president. Then in 1929, Herbert Hoover was president.
Herbert Hoover, 31st president.
Herbert Hoover was president from 1929 to 1932. Before he was president, he went to Stanford University when it opened in 1891. After college, he was an engineer. He was a Republican. He only served for 4 years. While he was president, people got mad at him because the Great Depression was about to start. Then, in 1932, he was renominated but was defeated by Franklin D. Roosevelt. All in all, he was a great president.
Franklin Roosevelt, the 32nd president.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the 32nd president. He was president through 1932 through 1945 and was president during the Great Depression. Then he made the New Deal to help people find jobs. It also included making Social Security. Then, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, he led U.S. into war. Roosevelt had 6 kids and a wife named Eleanor. Did you know that he was related to another president? Teddy Roosevelt was his 5th cousin. He had 7 dogs, too. His dog Follow was very famous and spoiled. He got a bone for the president's breakfast tray and a full dinner every day. Roosevelt also was the last president to have his inauguration day on March 4th. Life was going good until he was struck with polio in 1921, but that didn't stop him. He still traveled and made the troops of World War II feel better. He finally died on April 12th of old age. Roosevelt was the 7th president to die in office. A great man and better president, there is no doubt FDR lived an amazing life.
Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president.
Harry S. Truman went to France during World War I as a captain in field artillery. He went to school. He attended the University of Kansas City Law School. He was the first president from Missouri. The party he was part of was the Democratic Party. He served from 1945 to 1953. He made some very crucial decisions during his presidency. Truman ordered to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. Harry dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The Japanese surrendered quickly in 1948. The Russians blockaded West Berlin. Truman sent big airlifts to the Berliners until the Russians backed down.
Dwight D. Eisenhower was the 34th president of the United States.
When David was 25, he graduated from West Point Academy. In 1952, Eisenhower beat Alcide Stevenson by 529,000 votes. In 1953, he became president. During Eisenhower's lifetime, he tried to bring peace to communist nations during the Vietnam War and the Cold War. He was successful with peace with South Korea during the Korean War. Throughout Eisenhower's lifetime, he has tried to achieve peace with nations at war against America, to become known as a peaceful person.
John F. Kennedy, the 35th President. John F. Kennedy is the 35th President who was elected November 8, 1961 to November 22, 1963, when he was assassinated. When he was inaugurated, he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." At the age of 43, Kennedy became the first Roman Catholic president. As president, he hoped to make the United States like the First Nation and mostly about human rights. He also started the Peace Corps, and he told NASA to send a ship to the moon. On November 22, 1963, JFK was in a limousine when he was shot in the head and his neck. Did you know Kennedy was a boat captain in World War II? And when the ship was sinking, he dragged a wounded soldier to safety and saved his life?
Lyndon B. Johnson. He was the 36th President of the United States of America.
Lyndon B. Johnson was in World War II and almost died. Did you know Lyndon B. Johnson, his wife, and all his kids have the same initials, LBJ? While flying home in the presidential plane with John F. Kennedy's body, Johnson was the first and only president to be given the presidential oath on a jet and have a woman give him the oath. He was riding behind Kennedy when he was shot. Did you know Johnson and his wife were married each with a $2.50 ring from Sears? While in office, he led several space explorations. Did you know he was the first a teacher? The 24th Amendment was passed while he was in presidency. Johnson was one of the only two presidents from Texas. Lyndon B. Johnson died a mile away from his birth home.
Richard Nixon was the 37th President.
Before he was President of the USA, he fought in World War II as a Navy commander. He lost one of the closest elections in American history to John F. Kennedy. On January 20th, 1969, he finally became president. During his 8 years of being president, Nixon spoke to the Russian leader during 1972 to produce a treaty for the limit of nuclear weapons. While he was president there was a break-in. The people who broke in wanted to re-elect the president. Because of the break-in, he resigned from office on August 9, 1974, and Congress almost impeached, getting kicked out of the White House. Later, Nixon was replaced with Gerald Ford. After leaving the White House, he consulted with Democratic and Republican presidents.
Gerald Ford, the 38th President.
Gerald Ford's nickname is Jerry. He served from 1974 through 1977. In 1975, his daughter Susan Ford asked her father if she could have her senior prom at the White House. Gerald let her have her prom there, and it was hosted on May 31st, 1975. He was a Republican and went to the University of Michigan in 1935. Then he decided to go to Yale University to graduate there in law school and graduated in 1941. At the University of Michigan, he played football and was elected into the Men of Michigan. He was the vice president under Richard Nixon in 1973 and 1974. In 1976, he lost against James Carter.
James Carter, the 39th President.
James Carter's nickname is Jimmy. He served from 1977 through 1981. He was the Georgia State Senator in 1963 through 1966. He also was a Democrat and graduated from U.S. Naval Academy in 1946. and he is the only president to be a graduate from Naval Academy to be elected to the White House. Also, he was the only U.S. president to have received the Nobel Peace Prize after leaving office. He also created 2 departments of health to help Americans. After his presidency, he worked at Habitat for Humanity to build houses.
Ronald Reagan, our 40th president.
Ronald Reagan was our 40th President of the United States. Serving 2 consecutive terms, he achieved his greatest goals. Reagan designated Martin Luther King Jr. Day a national holiday and gladly gave kids a day off school. Being a Republican, he cut taxes, increased defense budget, and made an arms control agreement with the Soviet Union. Although at the end of his presidency, he claimed his greatest achievement was making the American people believe in themselves again. A fun fact about him was his crazy obsession with jelly beans. He would receive jelly beans in the mail from friends and outsiders for no reason at all. In 1980, he ran against James E. Carter and John B. Anderson. In 1984, he ran against Walter F. Mondale. Reagan also survives being shot in Washington, D.C., outside of Hilton Hotel. And that brings us to the conclusion of this fascinating president.
George H.W. Bush, the 41st president.
George Bush, a conservation Republican, was serving his second term as vice president under Ronald Reagan when he was elected president in 1988. He was the first incumbent vice president to be elected to the presidency since Martin Van Buren in 1836. A key focus of Bush's presidency was foreign policy. He helped to improve U.S.-Soviet relations and helped other countries. In May, he went to Belgium to attend the 40th anniversary celebration of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. He and his wife, Barbara Pierce, had 6 children. They were named George, Robin, John, Neil, Marvin, and Dorothy. Bush finished his presidency in 1993.
William Jefferson Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States.
Bill Clinton was in office from January 20th, 1993 to January 20th, 2001. He graduated from Yale and Georgetown University. He won the campaign easily against George H.W. Bush. He became a lawyer after he graduated. Did you know Bill Clinton was not his actual name? His actual name was William Jefferson Clinton. While president, he had the lowest crime rate in 26 years, and 22.5 billion jobs were created. In office, he had the longest world peace duration. Bill partnered with George H.W. Bush to rebuild Haiti after a huge tsunami. He used to be the U.S. governor for Arkansas. During his presidency, the health care program was improved, as well as the economy. At the moment, his wife Hillary Clinton is running for president. Can you imagine Bill Clinton could be back in the White House once again as the first man? I hope you like these facts about Bill Clinton.
My president is George W. Bush. He was the 43rd President of the United States.
Father was the 41st President. He also sent Army troops into Iraq. His nickname was W. Also, he was the governor of Texas. George graduated from Yale and Harvard. He served his term during Hurricane Katrina and 9/11. Another accomplishment is that he owned the Texas Rangers. President Bush also teamed up with Clinton to rebuild the country of Haiti. He was into the oil business. George was also in the National Guard and trained to become a pilot. Did you know that George W. Bush was the second son of a president that became a president? In the 2000 election, George W. Bush lost first his opponent in popular votes, but won in electoral votes, then became president. His political party was the Republican. Thanks for listening to my paragraph all about George W. Bush.
Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States.
Barack Obama graduated from Columbia University in 1983. He also graduated from Harvard Law School in 1991. Before Barack Obama was president, he was a lawyer. His presidential salary is $400,000 a year. Barack Obama is a Democrat.
Barack Obama is the first president from Hawaii. In 2008, Obama and John McCain were both running for president, but Barack Obama won by about 10 million votes over John McCain. Stop. In 2012, Barack Obama and Willard Mitt Romney were both running for president, but Barack Obama won by about 5 million votes over Willard Mitt Romney. The first president of the United States of America that is African American is Barack Obama. Those are some facts about Barack Obama.